Hey there, I'm Una, and I'm a unicorn. And do you know what unicorns are bad at? Booking meetings. Except for me, of course. My secret? I use Cirrus Insight to schedule all my meetings. That's Cirrus, spelled C-I-R-R-U-S, Cirrus Insight. Cirrus Insight takes all the hassle out of booking and scheduling my meetings, cutting the amount of steps involved to half, if not more. Now, instead of a 43-message deep email thread where everyone's trying to find the right time to meet, I can just send them to a link on my calendar page. From there, anyone who wants to meet with me can see when I'm available and schedule a meeting. It's magic. Like me. And I should know a thing or two about magic. I'm a unicorn after all. But wait, there's more. Do you use Salesforce? If you do, Cirrus Insight can also remove most of the manual data entry involved with updating and maintaining your Salesforce environment. To learn more and start your 14-day free trial, visit cirrusinsight.com. That's Cirrus, spelled C-I-R-R-U-S, cirrusinsight.com. And tell them Una sent you.
Hello, everyone. I'm your host and Salesforce MVP, Christy Campbell. Joining me on the show today is Martin Humpolec, Salesforce Senior Consultant at PwC Czech Republic. You can find him on both Trailblazer.me and Twitter at mhumpolec. That's MHUMPOLEC, and his blog at martinhumpolec.cz. Today we're going to dive into Salesforce Field Service, what unique objects and processes it adds on top of Service Cloud, as well as some different use cases, plus an interactive option to see how well you fare as a dispatcher. So stay tuned. Hello, and welcome to Serious Insights for Admins. I'm your host, Christy Campbell, and I'm joined today by a guest far away in the Czech Republic, Martin Humpolec. Did I get it?
Yeah, got it. Absolutely awesome.
Did it so well.
We've been born here, or what?
Senior consultant at PwC Czech Republic. Welcome. Hello.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your background and.
Well, it probably depends on the history, but I started my career in last century. I started with Lotus Notes back then, and I worked quite some time. Then I took some break. And then I enjoy my parental leave. And during the parental leave, I been at a conference and they've been looking for Salesforce consultant. It was like 2012. And I was like, okay, Salesforce, I hear it for several times already. So maybe it's something I will try. And when I opened Salesforce, I realized it's practically the same as the Lotus Notes I've been used to. The same philosophy of rapid application development, how they
in the cloud,
how they call it, and this is click not code in the cloud. So I was like, okay, sounds good. So I jump in. I started implementations mainly for nonprofits, and I learned Salesforce. So when the parental leave ended, I joined PwC as senior consultant, Salesforce senior consultant. And from that, I just learn more and more because I like to learn. And then came the moment when field service appeared on the stage. And a colleague of mine, Pavel Dobzhinsky, somehow fell in love with the product. And in one period, I would say that anyone who has been Service Cloud certified was strongly pushed by Pavel to do the FSL back then certification. So obviously I took the certification as well. And then I just kept learning. Now we are spreading the knowledge internally. So we are running some internal classes for other consultants to get to know FSL more. And I would say that we all hope that it will take off. And it will really be the product number, 4 in number of implementations. So far it's not there, I would say, but it's getting.
Is it more common there for people to have been in a job for a long time? I see you've been at PwC over 6 years. Is that, I feel like my habit or my thought of the current state is that people jump around more than they used to in, my parents and their parents' days.
I will have a training about Generation Z tomorrow. So I'm from the generation when after 5 years you started to think maybe it's time, but you can survive 10 years.
Okay.
But yeah, when we speak with the junior candidates, I can see that they are changing job every year.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm too old. I still don't believe it's the good thing for the company and maybe for them as well, because like it takes a few months to just get to know the things and the people, and then you're basically leaving. And again, I would say that might be the difference between in Europe or Czech Republic and States. I still don't understand how you can leave the jobs with 2 weeks notice time. Like you have no time to pass the job to someone else, right?
Sure.
In the Czech Republic, there is 2 months notice period. So we still have 2 months to wrap up the job.
Wow. Okay.
So it's like basically if you are changing job every year, it means that first 3 months you have the trial period. Then you are working, and then you have 2 months of the leaving period. So you basically worked for like 7 months.
Huh. There's a trial period in the beginning too?
Yeah, there is 3 months trial period at the beginning.
Interesting. Anyway, clearly we could go down that rabbit hole for a whole. I just noticed that on your LinkedIn and was curious, but back to the scheduled programming. So I already messed up and called it Field Service Lightning again. So you had taught me that a few releases ago, they changed the name to Salesforce Field Service.
Correct.
So I'm going to try and SFS, try and say it correctly.
I'm still not able to say the acronym. It doesn't flow that nicely. Exactly. Yeah. When they introduced Field Service, it was Field Service Lightning, like everything was Lightning. And then came the period like 2 years ago when they said that they will be dropping Lightning from everything besides the Lightning.
Yeah.
So that's the follow-up, I would say.
Okay, so, and you mentioned Service Cloud. So this is a package that lays on top of Service Cloud?
That's a great question, and I clarified it yesterday with Pavel because I'm aware of the pricing and licensing, and I just wanted to be double sure. So I checked the Salesforce website. I checked Pavel as my source of truth, and Field Service is an add-on for the Service Cloud.
Okay.
You can see it on the Service Cloud page of Salesforce. It clearly says that it's an add-on from 50 euros or dollars up. You can see it from the certification, because if you want to pass the field service certification, you need to be Service Cloud certified. So it's clearly add-on. When you go to the field service page, it says that it costs you $150, which is the same price as Service Cloud. And the Service Cloud is included in the price. So the sentence we came up yesterday with Pavel was like, yeah, it's an add-on, but the Service Cloud is included in the price for free at the moment.
And so Service Cloud itself gives you cases, gives you other add-ons too, with Live Agent or Omnichannel for chat and other case options. So what additional things does Field Service add in terms of, special data structure?
I would say that the Field Service focus on the field, people in a field which needs to travel to the job. That's something you will not get with the Service Cloud. The case is just, okay, you have some SLA, some milestones, but we don't really account for the time it will take you to get to the customer. And that's the moment where the that's the one of the moments when the field service kick in, because it can account for the time you will spend on the road. And it can also account for the time you need for the legal breaks between the jobs.
Okay.
And it can account for the time you need for the paperwork after you finish the job, and all these scheduling things. But besides cases you already mentioned, it has work orders, which made it from the field service package, which was and still is a package, directly into the product. So the work order is a standard object these days.
Wow. Okay.
The same as the location, for example. But on top of that, what field service provides is work types templates, where you specify what the work needs to have to be completed, like which types of materials you need, or which type of skills the person needs to be able to do the job. So that's one thing. So when you're creating the work order, you create it based on the work type, and based on that, you will get all the skills required and the products required, which you need to have to be able to do the job.
Okay.
And then it comes with something called service appointments. And the service appointment is basically a child object to the work order, and it specifies the timing, because it's about the interaction with the customer. So it's basically the service appointment tells you, okay, you can arrive tomorrow at 9, but no later than 11. And it will take like 4 hours to finish the job. So the technician gets some window where they can move with the timing, but at the same time, the customer knows when the technician will arrive. So it brings, let's say, clarity to both parties.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the service resources, which are the technicians in the field with their skills and their availability and their vacations and other reasons why they can't work, which you will use for the scheduling purposes.
Okay. So then
there are like 10 other objects, but they are minor.
That's a good, and to me, at least in the US, I think of like the cable guy, right? Or somebody coming to turn on your power. That to me is somebody who has a work order that I have to sign at the end, that gives me that window. So are those the service appointments? Is it something that an agent has to assign from a case, like that there's a human, or can you make it available that people can choose their own times?
You can definitely make it available for the end customer as well, so they can schedule their own time. I would say the typical scenario, maybe also because of the existing workforce and based on the licensing questions, is that you do have some agent who will speak to the customer and they will schedule the job, and they are basically just scheduling what's the right time. And they are kind of scheduling the technician, whether they will be available. And then you have the dispatcher who really confirms the schedule.
Okay.
And who organize the technicians in the field. So whenever the technician has a problem, they will contact the dispatcher to solve it. Like, okay, it's way harder than I expected, so it will take extra hour. Right. You need to reschedule everything after that. Or I just, I don't know, I
got a flat tire.
Yeah. So cancel everything and reschedule it to someone else. And the dispatcher also cares about the optimization of the scheduling, so they can do in-day optimization when they see how it moves. They are quicker or slower. They can do the optimization upfront. So the scheduling is a big part of field service, and I would say it's one of the main added value of the product.
So there's some optimization, or in my head, Einstein built into it, of trying to, you're closest to me, even though the timing isn't exactly what I want. So it makes the most sense kind of decisions.
Yeah, I would say there are 5 or 6 different optimizations technique. So it starts from the agent who is scheduling the appointment with you. So will you be tomorrow at home at 9? So that's the first place, and they schedule the job, and they schedule the arrival window when you will be available, which is one part of the job. But when the agent speaks with you, the schedule looks different than it will look like in 2 weeks' time, because your neighbor will have the same problem, and the neighbor across the street as well.
Okay.
But you each will call at different days.
Sure.
So you will be scheduled across 2 weeks' time. But then there is the optimization which usually runs before the day, which looks at the whole schedule and say, oh, but those two are neighbors. So if the technician is there, it makes sense if they can join, because it will be cheaper for everyone and better. So that's the optimization which usually runs before the day. And then during the day, the technician is quicker or slower. So you need to either optimize or postpone the meetings they have in the afternoon, or maybe they will have time for one extra. So you can, during the day, optimize the schedule and give them some extra appointments during the day. And what's important is that I wouldn't say there is Einstein as far as I understand the artificial intelligence, but there is something called, I just lost the word, but basically the scheduling policy. So you can say, okay, at this moment, what's important for us is the customer. So we want to solve the problems as soon as possible. It doesn't matter that I will be at the location next week.
Across town. Okay.
Across town and all these kind of signs. So now we are optimizing with the customer be happy. Then, I don't know, tomorrow or in the afternoon, we will optimize for the minimized travel, because we realize it's too costly. Then maybe there is some ad hoc problem, like the electricity has been cut in the whole part of the town.
Okay.
So it's the emergency situation, and we don't care what are the other meetings or other tasks to do.
Right.
We will just move all the technicians to this area of the town to fix the issue.
The emergency issue.
And then we will go back to normal.
Okay, that makes it's interesting to think about all those scenarios, and that's a lot to manage.
And I would say that's maybe based on the feedback I'm getting from the customer, it's one of the surprising things which is missing from the product, because this policy can be, you can really specify, okay, the travel time is important, the costs, because you can have internal people and external people and more experienced people and less experienced people. They can be quicker and slower. And you can all take into account this when you schedule the work. But what you can't do at the moment is to run scenarios. Like how the scheduling will change if we say that we care 10% less about the customer and we want to add 10% to the travel time. What will be the impact?
Okay.
So that's something you can do, but you can't really run like 10 different scenarios and say, okay, this is the best. So you basically just tweak it across weeks, maybe months, to get to some point when you are really happy with the different rates for each of those.
So there are ways that you can set those policies, or is it more that the dispatcher is deciding based on that policy?
No, you set the policies.
Okay.
You set the policies and the product just follows them. Ultimately, the dispatcher is the god of the scheduling, so they can manually change it, override and whatever do. But if the system follows, then they follow the policies you set up as problem management.
What other kind of, so you mentioned you can't exactly run full scenarios. Which I think is an interesting management tool. And I guess, are there other, I'm assuming there's other tools that do these kinds of things, right? So are people typically moving from some other system into field service, or are they, have they been doing this with spreadsheets and sticky notes, and like this is their first foray into automating it?
I would say that it depends on the company. Obviously, the big companies, the telecommunication company and the gas company and all these kind of things already have some system, and they run some form of scheduling. But based on the numbers we see from the customer, I would say they must be using the whiteboard a lot, because I would say the typical ratio between the dispatcher and the technician is like one dispatcher cares about 5 to 10 technicians.
Okay.
Which sounds like the white paper or whiteboard, because that's the amount you handle. In field service, I would say that the dispatcher is able to see, if I'm not mistaken, 500 technicians. So basically, because the whole optimization and scheduling is done by the program, system. And the dispatcher just handle the exceptions, I can understand why they can handle that many more people. I would say the normal is somewhere around 50 technicians. It really depends on the size of the job or the length of the job. If you have a smaller job,
lot of small jobs.
It's different than if you have a big one. But
wow,
yeah,
that's
a big difference, huge
Mm-hmm.
upgrade. I would say quick return of investment, potentially. But at the same time, it's the question of like, and maybe US is different, but in Europe, it's like, should we lay off the people, or what will we do with them if we really have like 50 extra dispatchers who has been with the company for their full life?
Right. Interesting. What are the other limitations of, or any, right, limitations of Salesforce Field Service? I keep starting with the F. That, I guess, like I say, there's other systems that probably do this, right? So that you're kind of evaluating that maybe field service isn't the right answer.
When we constantly see a challenge, I would say, is that field service expect that the location has a GPS position.
Interesting. Okay.
So when you spoke about the cable guy, I can see the cable guy who came to your home to finish the cable. But then quite often they have the cable guy who is responsible for the cable across the whole country or these kind of things. And when you have the job that you need to check the cable, whether it's still okay across the whole country, that's something where I would say we didn't really find a solution in field service yet. And the closest we are getting is that there are most likely some stations across the way which
have an address.
Do have some position. So maybe that's the closest we can get to handle this linear buildings or whatever you call it.
Okay.
So that's one of the challenges, because that's also the challenge for the big companies who has the money and resources to implement this program.
And we've talked about some, I think, more obvious use cases that come to mind, right? And even the more I think about it, the more you could tie into it in terms of if you have a GPS location and do some geofencing, I'm assuming you could automate some things around notifications or like checking into appointments and that kind of stuff.
There is quite a common requirement that you want to auto check in when you get to the location. So that's kind of common. I'm thinking about the geofencing, whether I ever saw it or whether it's maybe more to the Salesforce maps related.
Well, I used to work there, so that might be why that word comes to mind for me. But
But it definitely impact. That's again fun about the law, because in Germany, I believe you can track the contractors. So there is a special permission in the product which you can check that the application will not track the people with this permission, because it's against the law. So you need to be careful, because otherwise you do have the application on your mobile phone and it knows every single minute where you are.
Yeah. And
but
it's against the law.
Then you finish your job, or maybe even you are a contractor, so it's not your business or the company business where you are. You just need to do the job.
Okay.
That's the important part.
Okay. Whether you drive there on the most optimized route or not, we'll never know.
We'll never know.
Interesting.
Or should not know. I don't know.
Okay. So we've talked about some more, easy, common use cases, right? What are some other, different things I might not be thinking of that maybe are a good fit for field service?
I would say the obvious case is all those technicians, because it's built on top of Service Cloud. So it's like the obvious choice. But at the same time, it's not just about the technicians. Even the field service has an extension that the technician can do some upsell, which goes back to Sales Cloud. So from this perspective, you can give it to the salespeople as well. And if you have all those salespeople who are driving across, I don't know, pubs to get the orders, or you have the salespeople who measure the window and the door, or pools and these kind of things, they can use it as well, because it will really schedule the appointments in the most optimal way. So it makes sense.
Okay.
And for the technician, and it's probably not, well, it can be even for the salespeople. When I see the salespeople who are responsible for the pubs and bars, they have the regular roads across the restaurants. And the same is for the technician. They do have the regular check-ins of lifts, for example. So that's something which you can, again, automate with the field service, because you just say what's the maintenance period, and it will automatically schedule the service appointments, so you don't need to think about it.
Oh, interesting. So like if you have to get your elevator checked every year, then like getting you in a rotation and building that whole schedule. And then of course, new ones might be coming in. So it's not just going to be you visit the same one every November 1st.
And it can be different maintenance, like every month will be a small maintenance, and every 6 months will be a bigger maintenance.
Right.
The waste companies use it to empty the trash bins, for example.
That's interesting, because I don't think of it as like specific houses. I think of the trash pickup as like the neighborhood. But I mean, some places you have to like pay to be a part of the trash pickup, right? You don't necessarily.
Yeah, exactly. And you might have like different sorts of trash. You have the glass, the plastic, and
recycling.
paper.
Yeah, I really like the idea of it tying into like blinds, for example, for your windows, right? You've got a salesperson that's coming to measure and could potentially sell you / upsell you, right? But then you also have the installer that needs to come once I make a choice and install everything, right? So you can have the same tool that's managing both. And you mentioned, the newer versus older, more experienced employee. Can you set, so I know you mentioned skills specifically, but can you set like weighted so that my brand new person doesn't get as many jobs yet because they're going to take longer?
Yeah,
and
that goes to the skills. So, for example, I do have the electrician, the gas man, and the waterman. And you have the skills on different level. So the junior one is like 1 or 2. The expert is 9.
Okay.
And then you have the work type. And the work type says, okay, there is, you need to finish the electricity in the house. So the required skills is the electricity. and you do have the experience that to finish connecting the house to the grid takes like 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have the level of the skills, you can know that the person who has like the 1 or 2, it will take like 4 hours, and for the expert it will take 2 hours. So it can be taken into account with when you schedule.
Mm-hmm.
It can calculate these kind of things and respect your time as well. What it does as well, when we speak about the work types, we can also probably speak about something called complex work. So when you have the water pipe under the road, you can't really send a technician to do something because it's under the road. So you need to have someone who will make the hole.
Okay.
Then you can have the waterman who will fix the water pipe. And then you need to schedule to
fix the
fill
hole.
in, fix the hole and put the asphalt on the top. So it's like 4 different professions.
Okay.
Maybe with some extra equipment as well. So the extra equipment you need is like a resource in the system as well, and you might require it for some of the tasks. And it will schedule the whole chain of the service appointments in the correct order. So you don't fix the hole first, then somehow expect them to get to the water pipe, and then you will you
and
will
then make
the
another hole. So that's so interesting. So then, in that case, but are those external resources, like, or because all those people don't necessarily work for the water company, or maybe they do?
Yeah, you can, and it's a big topic in the field workforce, that they are quite often contractors.
Okay.
And again, I'm not sure whether it's some law or whether it's just the approach. But what we usually see is that when you have the internal person, you really schedule the job like per hour. Or you know where they will be at 10 and at 11, at 12. When you speak about the contractors, you can set up the system in a way that you don't really care. The contractor will just give you 40 hours a week of their capacity.
Okay.
And you will schedule 40 hours a week of work. And you don't really care whether they will all deliver on Monday, because they have 5 people who are collectively able to deliver 40 hours a week.
Okay.
Or whether it's a different way. And also you can even extend the dispatcher to the external people. So your internal dispatchers don't really care about who will do it from the contractor side. They just know that it has been given to the contractor. But the contractor can use the dispatcher license to really spread it across the resources and schedule the resources. And then I would say it's a special type of the resource. It's a crew. So it's a combination of several people where they have a different skills, or maybe you just need 2 people to deliver the job because it's, I don't know, something heavy.
Okay.
So you need 2 people on the spot.
So then, did those contractors, or does everyone have to have a license, or is it an Experience Cloud type license where it's like an external or platform seat or something that they can participate in the flow?
It's at the end, it's Experience Cloud, which can be combined with the partner community. I would say if you have the upsell version as well.
Mm-hmm.
And if they need to log in or not, I would say it's a question of what's the business you have with them. I can imagine that you are just sending them the emails like, hey, do the job at this address, and then confirm to this dispatcher it has been done. And they don't even need to log in into the system. And I saw implementation like that. But I would say, as a Salesforce consultant, you obviously want everyone to log in into the system and update the data on the go, have accountability, up-to-date data, and all these kind of things.
Interesting. Okay. And so we talked a little bit about the costs. So it sounds like there's kind of a mix of, the full license that includes Service Cloud, and then maybe some Experience Cloud licenses that you may need.
I would say that the field service really simplified your life because the license you paid for the field service includes all the other clouds you might potentially need.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not mistaken, it's $75 for the technician, $150 for the dispatcher, and $200 if you have the technician with the possibility to upsell.
Okay.
Or something like that. Or maybe $75 for the contractors and $150 for dispatcher or technician internal, and $200 for the upsell. It makes more sense. Yeah, the pricing is pretty simple. It follows the same numbers as any other product, I would say.
Okay. Yeah. The more you want to do, the more it costs. But
more cost.
But then it sounds like the balance is that you're optimizing with potentially less workforce. So obviously it's going to be more expensive than your whiteboards. But
yeah,
if you can get 2 more install jobs done, it's, because of the timing and optimization, then, you're kind of offsetting those costs. So
the big question was that you can also schedule the special resources you might have.
Okay.
Like, I don't know, the crane, for example.
Okay. So actual.
So it's a service resource which needs a license, but at the same time, Salesforce does understand that it's not really a resource which will log into the system and do something. So there are some ways how to negotiate these resources and get them for free.
Interesting. So literally tracking equipment.
Yeah. If you have a special equipment which needs to be scheduled for the job,
okay,
you can track it.
Interesting. So this all seems like super intriguing, but also complex, right? Especially, I mean, you've probably got similar use cases, but everyone's got their special piece to it. Is this something that you would recommend if someone new is coming in to decide to become a Salesforce admin or consultant? Is this something you think you would encourage them to specialize in?
I still didn't make up my mind about it. And I would say the same is with CRM analytics, CPQ, and few other products. Because I would say it's definitely in share. Like there are not many people who knows the product. But at the same time, it's niche because there are not many customers who buys it.
Right.
So it's just about the balance. What's better? I hope
Maybe
the opportunity is waiting.
Right. If you have some background in it or, have been a dispatcher or something, then maybe you've got a leg up for people that do want to implement it. But if you have no context to it whatsoever, then maybe wait and see if you fall into it.
Yeah, I would say so, because potentially there is a big knowledge in the territory planning and in the scheduling policy, what might be more important and how to balance it, and how to specify the work types and how precise be with the scales. And all these kind of things. So potentially, if you do have the experience in this area, that's definitely your benefit, because you can really consult with the customer and advise them, and it's not just the technical implementation. Because I would say the technical implementation is potentially easy, but the business knowledge behind might be tricky.
Well, and especially you mentioned, I'm sure there's, starting settings. And then you mentioned as you tweak the policies or as you start to see, how it works, then you could kind of evolve from the implementation perspective, as you're adding in new skills or people and seeing how that changes the mix. Then it's kind of a living, breathing thing to maintain.
And it should be.
And do companies, so let's say this like window company, right, that's doing the measuring and installing. I mean, they're using Service Cloud maybe for cases as well, for leaky windows, all that, and just cases that don't require a visit. If they're using Sales Cloud and even Marketing Cloud or something else, do you think that typically there's an admin that's specifically tasked on the field service pieces, or is it kind of one aspect that your admin architect? I mean, I guess it depends on the size of your org too, but
I would say so.
do you get a specialist, or is it kind of just like everything else, that I manage? This today I'm working on something for sales, and then tomorrow service, and then the next day field service?
Like if you are on the client side, I would expect that the whole team of the admins will able to cover anything. And there will be definitely some universal people who are able to cover all the clouds. I would say the big part is the implementation. So I don't expect the client to implement it themselves. So that's probably where they will have the consulting company. And then the day-to-day job or the small tweaks is definitely something the admin can easily pick up. Because it gradually goes. It's like you start with the service resources definition, and then you go to and find out that there are some territories, and you can tweak the territories and see what the impact will be.
Gotcha.
And then you go to scheduling policies, and then you will have like more tricky question like, can we separate the internal and external resources, and can we balance how they will be scheduled? I don't know how to do it. So you go back to the consulting company, and they will do this part of configuration for you and will teach you something new. Okay.
So that's a really great balance of like, it definitely makes sense to have an implementation partner for experience in ABC, but then it's also kind of a clear handoff of what you want to do. So I like it. Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. Before I let you go, I did want to ask, when you take an ad minute for yourself to read or watch or learn something new, what's something you would recommend our listeners check out?
I would have two things maybe. The first one is related to field service. It's a game how to be a dispatcher. So you basically can play how many jobs you are able to schedule and how complex schedule you are able to handle. And then you will understand what the product really is able to achieve.
I'm such a nerd that I'm like, ooh, I want to play that.
Yeah, I really like it. And the second thing I can think of is a book. I believe it's kind of new. There is a guy called Robert Vlach here in Czech Republic who cares a lot about freelance or freelancers. And he wrote a freelance Bible. It's quite thick.
Okay.
And it has been recently translated into a few languages. English is one of them. And he really gives you the feelings or the information, like how to behave, what you should care about, or what you should pay attention to, and all these kind of things. So if you are on the freelance way, it's definitely one of the resources you might want to check out to just get a feeling whether you are on the right track or you are heading into some wall which will be painful.
Is it something that you read like cover to cover, or you kind of go reference sections of it? So it's not intimidating to those who don't. I love to
read it cover to cover.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm this kind of person. So I read cover to cover, and then I go back into specific sections.
Specific pieces. Okay. Well, for me, the thing that has been on my mind recently is org cleanup and maintenance, and getting some cadence together for myself. And I ran across an article from 2021, actually. Nana Gregg and Johan Furman both came up with a Salesforce cleaning menu. And what I liked that's got me thinking is they kind of have they call it mild, medium, and spicy. So the mild things that you can do every month, kind of what we were talking about with the elevators, right? And then, every release, so 3 times a year or once a year. So I'm actually working on getting into a cadence of an object a month to kind of do a check and refresh of the automations there, the fields that are there that you might be able to remove. Is it time for me to finally learn about dynamic forms and add some functionality and ease of use, or maybe some quick actions that can help? So not just cleanup, but really optimization. So that's where my head's at. So I really liked that article. So a little
That
spring
sounds good.
cleaning in the fall.
Yeah. I remember it. I wasn't able to schedule the time for that.
Well, that's always right. But that's always the battle. And, they do kind of touch on it can be tough when you've got the shiny new project work that other people see, or, the thing that they want. But setting yourself up for success on both sides, right? It's always going to be that balance. I don't like to clean my house, let alone clean my work. So I can definitely see it's not the highest priority, but that's why you got to get in some good habits. So
yeah, the technical debt is a real thing, and with the process builder going away, it's one area to clean.
Yep, we've got work ahead of us. So awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I don't have an ending catchphrase, so have a great day.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of Serious Insights for Admins. Don't forget to get your 14-day free trial and free yourself from the drudgery of manual data entry. Start now by visiting cirrusinsight.com. That's Cirrus, CIRRUS, insight.com. And I'll see you next time.